Hello and welcome to Deep Blue Sea, the podcast. I am Mark Hoffmeyer.
And I am Jake Lewitt.
And joining us is a man who might like Deep Blue Sea more than us. It's Brian Raftery.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Hey, so I got to tell you something. In 2016, I was a long-suffering Deep Blue Sea fan. And we knew we had Ebert on our side. We knew that Sam Jackson popped up on lists as like the best deaths of all time, but we didn't have that article that we could just show everyone, like, see, like, this is it. So as The Shallows is coming out, I find this article called Forget Jaws, the real shark movie to beat is Deep Blue Sea. And that was your article for Wired. And it was like, you were like Mel Gibson from Braveheart. And I was just so pumped up. That was my battle cry for Deep Blue Sea. So I've never been able to thank you for that article. But like, I've been researching, and like on Wikipedia, on the legacy part on Wikipedia, your article's referenced first. You type in, Brian Raftery and Deep Blue Sea, it's referenced. Like, I wrote a 20th anniversary piece for Rotten Tomatoes. I included that. Everyone includes your article in their Deep Blue Sea article. So it's like, it's the battle cry for Deep Blue Sea fans. So I just want to thank you personally that we have you on here. This was like,
oh, sure. No, that's so nice. I mean, frankly, like, I really do love Deep Blue Sea, and I loved writing that article, but it was probably something I was doing to meet a deadline, be my quota for that week. So I didn't realize it would have this legacy, and I certainly, did not expect to be compared to Mel Gibson, someone we all love to be compared to.
When I read that article, I burst out of my house. I ran about a mile. I started just doing Deep Blue Sea research. I think I even included that in the one you read on Reddit. I was like, yeah, this is it, people. Like, this is the article. Yeah, but no, I just want to say thanks for joining us and coming here to talk about this movie.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for having me.
So you know what? All right. So the chapter that we're talking about this week, how happy does it make? Like, how happy are you knowing that shark is in the room with Dr. Susan McAllister and just waiting for her to open up her locker and get that research so it can destroy it? How like, does that make you happy?
I mean, knowing where that scene goes, definitely. I mean, I also, when I was rewatching the movie last night, I'd really forgotten how well they set that up with that. Just the best shot in that whole moment is just you see her legs walking underwater, which is like such a strange. You never. I love shark movies. You rarely, if ever, see someone. I mean, you see a lot of legs dangling, obviously, but you don't see someone just walking in like low level water, where even that seems terrifying. And I think that's one of the things that's so great about Deep Blue Sea is that it's always got compared to Jaws when it came out, but it feels like the inverse of Jaws in so many ways, where it's like I think every time there was a Jaws trick, Renny Harlin decided not to do it. And I think, like, instead of having, a pair of legs dangling there that we all know are going to get bitten off, it's just someone walking in knee-high water, which is terrifying in this movie because you already know what these sharks can do.
But that's like the shallowest water is no threat. It feels like a threat, but like 3 steps down, she's in no danger. If a shark appears, she can easily get out.
Yeah, it's such an eerie idea because it's that same thing at the beach where whenever you see Jaws, if you go to the beach afterward, you're always sort of like, if your legs are dangling in the pool or dangling in the ocean, you always get that weird feeling. But it's actually like, it's scarier sometimes just to walk out and slowly get deeper and deeper in the water like that. So that is like, I do love this whole sequence, the whole back end of Deep Blue Sea, the whole third act is so much fun and so wonderfully ridiculous that, this scene setting up for what comes is fantastic. So once you know where it's going to, it's really delightful to kind of rewatch it.
Just in that shark's head, just waiting. And so we have this theory that the shark earlier in the film saw where she put the research, and it knew that she had the key. So it's just, do you think the Gen 2 shark sent that Gen 1 shark in there? Do you think the Gen 1 shark thought of it on its own?
I feel like, it's like, this is the kind of movie where I when I was rewatching it, I was like, I'd forgotten just how ridiculous so much this movie was. Like, I'd forgotten how smart the sharks were. And actually, weirdly, last weekend I just happened to put on some of Die Hard 2, which I love. And speaking of Renny Harlin, but I'd forgotten how insanely ridiculous. Like, I love Die Hard, but Die Hard 2 is so ridiculous, and you completely buy it in the first 20 minutes, where you're gonna buy that this cop can flash a badge, get into a luggage area, shoot, kill two or three guys in a luggage area, and then the cops will say, "Get out of here! This is our job." It makes no sense whatsoever. But Renny Harlin, Renny Harlin is really good, whether it's Cliffhanger or Die Hard 2 or Deep Blue Sea. He he is really good at making incredibly implausible ideas seem totally logical, so much so that you just don't question them. Like, you're just like, yeah, these sharks could be that smart. I don't know. It makes sense. I mean, they're pretty smart, right? Who knows if they can spot keys from, who knows if they can put together what a key is. Mm-hmm. So I think that is one of like the real delights of this movie is every time I rewatch it, I'm like, boy, on paper, this makes no sense, but this guy can really make this. Rennie Harlin can really sell the crazier stuff in this movie.
So like we talked about this in Die Hard 2, he rides a helicopter to land on a plane wing.
Yeah.
Right. And then what cliffhanger? He and John Lithgow have a fist fight on. Or wait, Sylvester Stallone and Rennie Harlin Stallone and Lithgow have a fist fight on a helicopter that's hanging off a cliff, and it's beautiful. Like I love.
It's true. Yep. I don't know. I also think Rennie Harlin and John Lithgow may have had a fist fight too during that movie. Who knows? It wouldn't surprise me at that point. But yeah, no, I really think Harlin, for all those '90s action directors, Verhoeven and Cameron and John Woo and Catherine Bigelow, and like they all kind of get their due, but I do think Harlin is really so underrated, and I think just sort of a classically like non-flashy, really smart, really story obsessed, action auteur. And I think this is my favorite movie by him, only because it's got sharks. But I really think his 90s stuff is mostly, even Cutthroat Island has some great stuff in it.
Everything's on screen in Cutthroat Island. Yeah. You watch that movie and it's all there. That's what I kind of love about it. Yeah. And I feel bad that it tanked, right? Because imagine if that and Long Kiss Goodnight were hits. Like Gina Davis probably could have done more action films. It could have opened up more doors. Like, I would have loved to have more of that kind of style of film.
Yeah, I mean, I think Long Kiss Goodnight has definitely been helped by the fact that it wasn't a hit, and I think it's become a cult movie in that sense, where it's so many of those 90s action movies were such big hits and are so kind of overdone that to find one like that sort of feels like a lost hit is kind of fun. I mean, every 5 or 6 years I rewatch that movie and I'm like, this is so much fun. I really can't believe it wasn't a hit, but the fact that it was not a smash clearly, I think, gave it a little extra, like a little cult following.
That's Sam Jackson's favorite role, he said.
Oh, really? That doesn't surprise me. Yeah, he's having a lot of fun in that movie.
And then recently he said that Deep Blue Sea is one of the movies he rewatches the most. Which
that's amazing that he has time to rewatch any of his movies. He's made like 326 of them. I can't imagine he's sitting down and. But I really think this was not a huge hit when it came out. It was a moderate hit, but I do think this is mostly loved by everyone who was involved and by most people who saw it. It's one of those movies that every time I mention to someone, they're like, "Oh yeah, that was such a goofy, fun movie," and they never mean it with in a pejorative sense. Like, and I think as we see now, like this movie was the end of an era. This was like one of the last big budget action movies, sci-fi monster B movies that wasn't based on a comic book, wasn't based on a video game. And at a certain point, the studios just stopped taking risks on movies like this. And I feel like there's a lot of warmth for this movie because they don't make them like this. This and Anaconda are kind of in the same era, and people look back at those movies very fondly because they're just, they're not based on anything else. They feel very original, and they're kind of a lot of people's introduction to R-rated movies.
And they're fun.
If you're just standing around, just look at somebody and go, "What do you think about Anaconda?" And they'll be like, "Love it." Anybody on the street.
Yeah. No one dislikes Anaconda. I did this book a couple of years ago, and I was interviewing about the movies in 1999, and I was interviewing James Vanderbeek about Varsity Blues, and he said the whole time they were shooting Varsity Blues, kids kept coming over to Jon Voight in between takes and just quoting Anaconda to him, and it's hilarious to me that like the guy who was in like Coming Home and Midnight Cowboy and all these like amazing radical 60s, 70s movies, like to most people is either known for being a complete nut job or for being vomited by a snake.
Or playing a complete nut job.
Yeah, I love that. They don't like, oh man, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, speaking of 1999, I have a weird question for you two. And I just want to know what you think. So I picked 9 1999 movie characters, and this is in honor of your book, Best Movie Year Ever, How 1999 Blew Up the Big Screen. Great book. Love it. It's in my library. I dig it. But I went and I picked 6 1999 characters, and I want you guys to tell me which 2 do you think would survive if they were in a Deep Blue Sea scenario. Okay. All right. So we have Lola from Run, Lola, Run, Tracy Flick from Election, Stifler from American Pie, Kit Ramsey from Bowfinger, Colonel Ives from Ravenous, and Jordan Armstrong, Nia Long from The Best Man. So those 6 their characters are on the Aquatica. Which 2 would survive?
I'm going to say Colonel Ives and Lola. Colonel Ives, is that Robert Carlyle's character, right? Or
yeah.
Guy Pearce.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. Either one would survive. Yeah.
I have to agree with Lola. Yeah, Lola definitely. She's magic. She can, if she dies, she just resets and tries again.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, imagine that movie. Like a Groundhog Day with sharks. Oh my gosh!
It's funny because I do think Ravenous and Deep Blue Sea. When I was like talking about the book when it came out, it's like those were two of the movies that I couldn't fit in there. But those are two examples of like these kind of really great studio B movies that were so well done. Ravenous was not perfect, but the stuff in it that works is fantastic. It's a fantastic score. It's like really great performances. It's really gnarly in fun ways. And I do think those are the kind of movies that I miss from big studios. And it's like the fact they came out within a few months of each other. It's like that does feel like kind of the end of that era. Whereas those movies that came out now, they'd have to be based on something else, and they'd have to cost like $125 million or $1.5 million. There would not be these kind of mid-budget studio fun horror, really smart, well-made, thrillers that they had back then.
I think Ravenous comes up on this show more often than Jaws does. Just because Mark has a theory that Sam Jackson's character is a Wendigo.
Because he eats people in the mountains. He's a can. Do you think he ate people in that mountain? Like when he's talking about that, like
I think it's implied, right? It's like that he did anything to survive, right? I mean, I think that's kind of like it would not surprise me.
7 survived the crash, 5 made it out. They ate the other 2.
Yeah.
It's alive, but on mountains. And
yeah, exactly. A little bit alive, a little bit USS Indianapolis.
Wait, Nick Cage?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I think of that as a Tom Sizemore movie. Really, actually, I mean, he really stole that one. I think.
Oh man. That's a great 90s group right there together in that movie. Oh, man. And a good cinematographer. I digress. But, I made that too easy. Yeah, Ives, I think. How would Stifler do?
I think he'd be in the Scoggins role. He'd be the comic relief that doesn't survive. And Tracy Flick, to me, sounds like a classic Dr. Susie character, where she's driven, but kind of brittle, kind of annoying. And maybe would make it a little, quite far, but... If the shark didn't get her, the people might kill her first.
Yeah, Kit Ramsey would be done. He's too paranoid.
Yes. I haven't seen The Best Man, so I can't.
Yeah, that in the Wood in '99.
Yeah,
that was a good doubleheader.
That was good. Those movies are both really fun. They're really, and The Best Man is like one of the few movies from 1999 that got a sequel, which is crazy when you consider like all the big hits that year. There was no Fight Club 2, no Office Space 2. There was The Best Man 2.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So in '99, I was working in a theater when this came out, and I just saw like people just went nuts for the movie. What was you said you were in New York for this?
Yeah, I had a very strange experience with this movie, which is that I was an intern at Entertainment Weekly that summer. I was right out of college, and it was like the most exciting job I ever had. I was living in central Pennsylvania, and then all of a sudden I'm working in Manhattan and going to screenings, and I wound up working there actually for 4 years afterward. But a very weird thing happened in 1999 in that, so Entertainment Weekly at the time was owned by Time Warner. And Entertainment Weekly and Warner Brothers, everyone always assumed that because they were owned by the same company that EW was beholden to covering Warner Brothers movies positively, which wasn't the case. And they got into some big fight that year. I think Warner Brothers, if I remember correctly, I was a low level staffer. I think Wild Wild West inspired the cover story that Entertainment Weekly wrote about Wild Wild West that summer was so in depth about what a disaster that movie had been behind the scenes that if I remember correctly, Warner Brothers actually banned Entertainment Weekly staffers from going to press screenings that summer. And I was so bummed because even as an intern, I could get into press screenings. So I remember it was Friday night, I think it was the Upper East Side. It was the Deep Blue Sea. It wasn't the premiere, but it was the first showing in New York City. So it was all critics, and then it was all junket people, critics, and then people they bring in from radio promotions and stuff to get the crowd really amped. And I was very nervous that they would throw me out. The guy did not care at all that I was from Entertainment Weekly. I remember being so nervous, I gotta see the shark movie. So I was really nervous when I got inside. I went straight to my seat because I was worried they would find me and then throw me out or something like that. I was 23. I was very insecure about that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got to see this movie with a crowd. I think it was only the second time it had screened with an audience. And I was sitting behind this row of junketeers who were, junketeers don't really exist much anymore, but they were people who were flown by the studios to go interview stars. And it was kind of a cozy relationship. You didn't get always the best stories out of it. So it was a lot of journalists who were